Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to The Upside. I'm Jonathan Oleski, and this is our virtual show brought to you by the Associated Jewish Federation of Baltimore and JMOR Magazine to keep Jewish Baltimore informed during this time of uncertainty. If you have questions for our guests today, please type them into the Zoom chat or message us via JMOR's Facebook page. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our wonderful hosts, Beth Goldsmith, Chair of the Associated Jewish Federation of Baltimore, and Dr. Scott Rifkin, publisher of JMOR. Beth and Scott, take it away.
Thanks, Jonathan. It was a year before the pandemic, and Baltimore's economy seemed to be heading in the right direction. A 2019 State of Downtown Baltimore survey found that employment and retail sales were growing, while office vacancies had actually begun to fall. Then COVID-19 hit, resulting in new challenges for most downtown businesses. Now, looking ahead at the rollout of the vaccine, we can think about a year, maybe a life post-COVID, a world post-COVID-19. What will Baltimore City's economic future look like? And how can we leverage the city's strengths to grow its core business district? Scott, I'm turning it over to you to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Beth. It's been a little while since we spoke. It's good to talk to you again. And I love the artwork behind you. Very nice.
Thank you.
So anyhow, today we're privileged to have Don Fry, President and CEO of the Greater Baltimore Committee, joining us. We all see the GBC mentioned in newspaper stories and Don quoted on the such, but not all of us know exactly what the GBC does. So let's start with that. Don, why don't you tell us about the Greater Baltimore Committee and what you all do? We can start with that.
Sure. Well, Scott and Beth, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. Greater Baltimore Committee is a 66-year-old regional business organization. Originally was founded strictly in downtown Baltimore, but when people started moving to the suburbs and the suburbs became very key to a regional economy, we became a regional organization. The mission of the Greater Baltimore Committee is to bring the corporate and civic community together to find solutions to problems that affect our region's competitiveness and our viability. We care very much about Baltimore City because although regions drive the economy, regions that are strong are those that have a very critically strong central core like Baltimore City. So we do a lot of focusing on Baltimore City despite our look at things from a regional perspective.
Very good. And obviously COVID has been the first, second, and third topic. I was in Israel a few years ago, and one of our guides said to us, it was one of the associates trip, that security is the first, second, and third most important political topic in Israel. And I would imagine for you, the number 1, 2, and 3 right now is COVID. There's lots else to talk about on this program, but start with COVID and the impact and where we are from your perspective.
Well, significantly, this 2020, most of 2020, and currently the present time is focused on COVID. And one of the things that we are focusing on specifically on, whether it be from a legislative perspective or a policy programmatic perspective, is more the recovery of businesses, not just reopening of businesses, but what we need to do to make sure that businesses are ready to recover, so they have the resources, so they have the connections that need to do to survive and thrive when we do reopen. Reopening is very important, but obviously we want us to recover as quickly as possible and get back to whatever that new normal is going to be.
How long does that take? I mean, I look at restaurants and a lot of them are closing. The fact that we open the doors in 3 months or 4 months or 5 months isn't going to save those restaurants when they've already closed. How long does it take to recover in those kind of areas?
Well, I think it's going to be difficult to give any sort of procrastination about how long it is going to take. Obviously, it's not going to be a short period of time. It's going to be a year or more, specifically for many of the small businesses and restaurants and other attractions to probably get back to where they were before. But I do think that some of the progress that we're seeing or starting to see with respect to vaccines is going to help us move forward, give us more optimism as we come back to a new state of how things are going to progress.
Can I jump in? I'd like to ask, beyond small businesses and restaurants, the things that are sort of obvious to all of us, what about larger corporations in the city? How have they been impacted by what's going on?
Well, I think all businesses have been affected by what goes on. Large businesses have obviously, I think, been able to handle a little bit better than small businesses and minority businesses are. And that's because they have the resources and some of the capacity to make those changes. Obviously, many of our large businesses are adjusting to a remote workplace. That has been a significant change in how things have operated. But I think it's, again, easier for many of our larger companies to adapt because they've got some of the technology behind them, and they've also had some experiences with it already, where small businesses don't have the same number of people to be able to handle it that way. They don't have that capacity from a remote learning perspective. So it's taken them a little bit longer to move forward. But we're all dealing with that situation. Even an organization like the Greater Baltimore Committee has some people working remotely and some of us at the office. So it's a different experience. One that I do think the key word in 2020 was pivoting. How do we pivot to make sure that we still are effective? But we had a presentation yesterday with Senate President Bill Ferguson, who referenced the fact that more than 30% of businesses actually did better in 2020 than they had previously. So we have seen a lot of businesses do well under the very challenging circumstances that we're dealing with.
When you speak of working remotely, I guess I sort of see it as an opportunity as well for us to attract other companies. Our workforce can work from home, and I'm wondering how you see that, as an opportunity.
Well, I think that there are some opportunities, obviously, from a talent perspective. Some people now, we can maybe attract talent maybe from other locations that don't necessarily have to be coming downtown. We want them to come downtown. We want them to be in the buildings. We want them to be in the commercial establishments that we have. But the reality is that now you can probably attract talent from other locations and be able to work your schedules out and work your Zoom meetings out, and with opportunities for people to be in other locations. That's something that's unique, something that maybe has been used to some extent previously, but maybe to a much larger extent as we come out of the pandemic.
So let's talk about politics for a minute. I saw the announcement that if you're over 65, you can start signing up for the vaccine, which I kind of chuckled at because we don't have enough vaccine for those people. They can get on any list they want, but that doesn't mean they're going to get a vaccine. So talk a little. So politics, as you know, is often about announcements and what it looks like. But what is it that the politicians? We just opened the legislative session. What do they need to do to help Baltimore, to help the region?
Well, Scott, I think it's a little bit more challenging than just what the state legislature needs to do. I mean, a lot of this is being driven at the national level. And I think we've seen through the new Biden administration efforts to try to come up with a strategic plan to make sure that we do get vaccinations distributed much more so than previously. I think they're still wrestling with that. At the same time, states are wrestling with the challenges that they have to get the vaccines from someone before they can actually start putting the shots in the arm. So I do think, though, it's important that the public understands that, yes, we're going through this process. Yes, there are certain levels of priority as far as who's going to get the vaccines, whether it be initially the frontline essential workers, then to people over 75, and then right down the line to teachers, and then down the line to, as you said just recently, 65 and over. I think that's encouraging for people to see that, yes, they're in line. Yes, they're ready to have those vaccines. Now we just have to make sure that we have that communication, that cooperation between the federal and the state and the local health departments to make sure that we can get those shots in the arms. But once we do that, I do think you're going to start seeing a lot more people feeling positive about coming out of this pandemic.
But what else does government need to do on top of vaccine? Obviously, we've got to get vaccines, but what else can government be doing, whether it's state or local or federal, to be helping the scenario that's going on?
Right. Well, I think you've seen a number of things. Governor Hogan has put together a stimulus package at the state level for $1 billion that's going to be heard soon in the Maryland legislature that provides opportunities for support for restaurants and other small businesses, also provides for forgiving some of the taxes that normally would be imposed on businesses, also holding unemployment insurance payments to previous levels so we don't see increases in that. Those are all very important. The state legislature, from the legislative body, the House of Delegates and the state Senate, are going to have some additional ideas I'm sure that they're going to incorporate into that stimulus package. The reality is that everyone wants to find a way to provide assistance to businesses, provide opportunities for people to get through this. Another big challenge, quite honestly, is the digital divide. Not everyone has the broadband capacity or access to broadband, which we need is vitally important now for education, for work, for even employment opportunities, searching for employment opportunities. So there's a lot at the state level that can be done, but also we need financial assistance. And most of that financial assistance is going to come from the federal level. And although there have been 2 stimulus packages passed by the federal government, there's a third one that the President Biden is promoting, or soon to be promoting now, that I think the state legislature is hoping that they see that come into play in the next couple of months, so that that can give them an influx of financial support so they can even do even more than they have been currently. And it's a very interesting timing because in Maryland, the General Assembly meets from January till April. Congress does not necessarily move that rapidly. So even if the congressional action were introduced this week, when it is finalized, it's hard to tell. And then the problem is that Maryland adjourns in April, but they'd like to know how much money they're getting so they can incorporate that into their budget, because that's the one thing that the state government has to do, is they have to adjourn with passing a balanced budget. And I'm sure they'd like to be able to know what they're getting from Washington and how they can apply that for transportation, education, state and local government, health purposes, things of that nature.
While we're talking about dollars, I want to switch a little to talk about some real estate, commercial real estate specifically in the city. Would you talk a little bit about vacancies? If we're losing businesses, we have vacant storefronts. What are the strategies to attract businesses again and to fill those vacancies?
Well, I think that you're right. We're obviously seeing some downturn from a vacancy perspective, and it's a big challenge for commercial building owners and also for commercial brokers. So it's certainly something we have to focus on. I do think that once we start to see people returning to work, that you're going to see again opportunities. But at the same time, I do think that many people in the commercial industry are looking at what the products that they have, how they can adjust the products to probably meet what the needs are going to be when people do start returning. Maybe that requires some sort of a change in the footprint of a building to make it more acceptable to people. Maybe there's going to be some sort of downsizing with companies if they're going to have some sort of a hybrid remote working situation more than they currently do now, but that's going to provide opportunities for other businesses, maybe not to take the same amount of square footage, but to take some square footage coming in. I think that we just are going to have to continually keep an eye on it and make adjustments as we start coming out of this pandemic. Baltimore is a great city, and the central business district has been very critically important to it. But you're going to start seeing, I think, when we come out of the pandemic, you're going to start seeing people back at work. Start seeing retail, restaurants, hotels more vibrant. You're going to start seeing more activity at the attractions that we see. All of that's going to be helpful to give people a feeling that, yes, we're on the way back. But it's going to take some time for that to happen. But Baltimore still has tremendous attributes, and I think people are still going to want to come back downtown, and businesses are going to want to open downtown, and new businesses are going to be attracted to new opportunities. The other part about the central business district is there's been some sort of a convergence over the last couple of years. It's not just businesses. We also as a neighborhood. You've got a lot of residential people in the downtown area. So it's one of the fastest growing neighborhoods in Baltimore. And that's critically important to make sure that we have that almost 24-hour type of benefit for people to be on the streets and to bring that vibrancy back to the city.
And how about out in the suburbs? How does the commercial real estate look to you out in the suburbs?
Well, I think that again, there's obviously has always been some benefits for being out in the suburbs. One is, of course, parking. A lot of people, there's a lot of free parking out in the suburbs when it comes to commercial real estate. Some of the cost of commercial real estate is not as high in the suburbs. That's not necessarily true everywhere. Obviously, there's some challenges that commercial real estate has in that it's not the easiest to move around the Beltway in the morning or in the afternoon as what it had been maybe 15 years ago. So you still have that sort of challenge moving forward. But the region as a whole is a very vibrant business opportunity. We are one of it used to be we're the only economic engine in the state. I think now it's fair to say that there are two economic engines in the state, the Baltimore region, and of course, obviously the greater Washington area with Montgomery and Prince George's County. We actually, it almost breaks down virtually 50-50 as far as the amount of economic impact from the respective areas. So we still have a very strong regional economy and still have significant economic impact on the state of Maryland.
And so you're not thinking, I hear a lot of doom and gloom that all those big office buildings around the Beltway are going to fail because everybody's going to have their employees working from home. You don't see that?
Look, there's going to be some change. There's no doubt about it. There's going to be some people who are going to prefer to work at home. Some people are going to, some business owners are going to see the fact that they've been able to operate at a better cost level if the people are working from home. But I think also people are going to also start realizing that there is a certain amount of synergy that exists of being in the office place. A lot of things are missing, a lot of innovation, a lot of imaginative thinking occurs, even just being in the hallways of an office and talking among themselves. You don't get that necessarily when you have that remote learning. So are there going to be some challenges and is going to take a while to fully recover? Yes, but I'm not necessarily seeing it as the doom and gloom and doom that many people suggest. I think there's going to be some adjustment, but I don't think it's going to, I think it's going to take us some time to recover, but I don't think we need to look at it as something that's going to be a negative impact on the region for a decade or more.
Gotcha. So you have a new mayor. You have a young, vibrant, energetic mayor. What does that mean for the city of Baltimore?
Well, this is an interesting time for the city of Baltimore. Not only do we have a new mayor, but we also have a new city council president and a new controller. It's the first time in probably more than 2 decades that we've had all 3 new citywide elected officials in place. Now, none of those citywide elected officials are new to government. Mayor Scott obviously served a number of terms as a member of the city council and then also city council president. City Council President Mosby served in the city council, then as a member of the state legislature, now back as city council president. And Bill Henry served multiple terms as a member of the city council and now as controller. So each of them brings experience with them. So we're not starting from scratch. I think what you're hearing and what you see is obviously a new approach, a new look, new vibrancy from these individuals. I think that's great. I think it's important to see a new perspective and to see new ideas and initiatives. I've been very impressed with the initial start by Mayor Scott and the others of how they're working together. And I think that's going to be critically important as we move forward. One of the keys right now is very difficult to be thrust in the position of a mayor in early December. And within a month, you've got to go to the legislature and have a legislative agenda to try to pass and try to make sure that you get monies coming to your city to help you out. But again, I think there's been a very open perspective from Annapolis of people wanting to help the mayor and wanting to help Baltimore City, recognizing that Baltimore City is critically important to the health and welfare of the state of Maryland.
So social justice, go ahead, Beth, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I just wanted to ask a little more sort of structural questions about the organization. And do you partner with many other organizations in the city?
We have a lot of opportunities to work with other organizations, different ones. Obviously, Downtown Partnership of Baltimore is one that we have relationship with, and I'll be talking with their president and CEO later today. We speak regularly. There's a number of opportunities that we hope to work together on, including some evaluations of economic development opportunities moving forward, whether it be some sort of a new strategy for downtown. Obviously, that's something that they're vitally important with, because that's the base of what they do is the downtown business district and surrounding areas. But that's something that's obviously very important from the Greater Baltimore Committee, from its legacy and its involvement over time. We also work with other business organizations, not only locally, but also at the regional and state level, whether it be local workforce development agencies, whether it be transportation operations, whether it be State Chamber of Commerce on many issues. So there's a lot of different collaboration, but our focus is, again, looking at things, sort of being a problem solver. What can we do to make it better for businesses to want to locate here or expand here? Not necessarily just because there's great tax benefits, not that that's a bad idea for that to happen, but for the fact that, you know, it makes logical business sense to want to be in Baltimore City and the Baltimore region. And that's a place that you want to have your business and you want to have your family. And that was, they're going to help us grow the economy and create jobs by having that sort of a business climate that's competitive to other places and other states.
So I think we all want social justice. We all want equality for everyone. What does Baltimore need to be doing? What does the state need to be doing? You know, there are cities that are having huge amounts of unrest on this issue. We haven't really seen that, particularly in Baltimore, but we want to be proactive. So what should we be doing in Baltimore?
I think there's a number of things that be done, not only in Baltimore, but also at the state level. You've seen just recently that Speaker Adrian Jones has announced a social justice agenda that focuses on things like health disparities, home ownership, access to capital, things of that nature. I mean, those are types of things I think are very important, not only at the state level, but also at the city level. For so many years, we've had situations where I think we haven't really paid the type of attention that we need to things like health disparities in Baltimore City, and also access to capital to small and minority businesses. Those are things that can really help generate economic growth and job creation. We also, the key word that I see is key words are equal opportunity. What do we do to make sure that everyone in the community, everyone in the city, everyone in the state has an equal opportunity to access jobs, to access growth within a job opportunity, to access capital, things of that nature. So I think that we have to look from top to bottom. We're looking ourselves not only internally at all of our processes, all of our procedures to make sure that they're very inclusive, but we'll be putting together various programs to help other businesses understand how you can take steps to be more inclusive, how you can help people grow within a company, how you can pay very attention to racial equity and social justice, which is critically important today and has been in the past, but certainly has been highlighted, unfortunately, with some of the incidents that occurred in 2020. But I think it's finally brought that to the forefront. And I think, you know, there needs to be a certain time when people not just talk about it, but move to action. And I think this is the time that people have determined we can't just talk, we have to move to action. I think you're going to see that happen at the private sector as well as with the public sector.
And how can businesses get involved with the GBC?
Well, GBC is a membership organization, so that's very important to have them become a part of us. So they just need to reach out, go on our website, or they feel free to call us at GBC or tap into us. Feel free to contact me directly. And there is obviously a membership investment that you would make as part of the organization. That helps us move. We have about 84% of our operating budget comes from membership investments. But once they're engaged with the GBC and a member of us, there's just tremendous opportunities to work on various policy committees, to talk about some of the things that we're discussing today, whether it be racial equity and social justice, public safety, transportation mobility, healthcare. There's all kinds of areas that people can become engaged with us, help formulate, help bubble up some of the answers. There's solutions to problems that we need to create to make a more competitive business environment. There's task forces, there's events. So there's all kinds of opportunities. I will tell you that And the one thing that people don't realize, although we oftentimes will list as the member or the key member, the CEO of the company, but membership of a company extends to all employees of that company. So everybody is entitled to participate on a committee, on a task force, come to events, and be engaged with us. I can assure you that if a company wants to become involved, they have members of their employees who want to be involved, we'll find a way to get them engaged in an area that they're interested in a way that they can provide benefit to us. Sometimes people think, well, I'm not an expert in public safety, so I don't want to be on the public safety committee. You don't have to be an expert in a particular field to be a very valuable player, because a lot of good ideas just come from people who are interested, who care, who are knowledgeable, and they give us new ideas and new approaches, which is what we need. We don't need just cookie cutter approaches all the time.
I think it's great. I really, that resonates with me too, a way for people to be able to get involved, while they're, doing what they normally do, but they can also get involved in improving our city. So that's great to know.
Beth, so I have a question here, Don, from Facebook, from Carlton and Homeland, kind of along the safety issue. So does the GBC take an active role in figuring out productive ways to help deter squeegee kids and street begging downtown to help with visitor safety and comfort? Talk about your role there.
Yeah, it's an area that many of our business owners and members care about significantly. I would not say that we have taken the most active role in that, because I know, although we have been in discussing about it, Downtown Partnership of Baltimore took a lead in this area through many of their efforts on the street. So I want to give them credit for the work that we've done. But we do keep in contact with city officials, let city officials know that we have concerns, let city officials know that these are issues that are bothersome to not only property owners or tenants downtown, but also people who come in from the suburbs to come to restaurants, attractions, sporting events, and things of that nature. You don't see that sort of activities to the magnitude that you do when you come in Baltimore. And I think for many people, it's unsettling when they see it for the first time or experience it for the first time. So it's important for us just to let people know that this is an issue, that it's something that needs to be addressed. If there's a way that we can be helpful, we want to be helpful. But I don't want to say that we have been out there taking a strong lead on it specifically, but it's certainly something that is on our radar screen as well as many others.
Thanks, Don.
Good. This is a great conversation, great information. Don, if you live out in the suburbs and you want to go do something in the city, and despite COVID, what would you do? Where would you go? Would you go to the zoo? Would you go to what would you do for fun? Let's promote the city a little bit.
Well, obviously, I mean, look, despite the fact that we're dealing with COVID challenges, the city and the attributes of the city haven't changed. Let's just talk about the central business district that we've been focusing on. I mean, there's so much just here in this section of town, whether it be the restaurants, the attractions like the aquarium, activities at the convention center, the arena, the stadiums. You have a redevelopment occurring at Rash Field on the south side of the Inner Harbor. We obviously are hoping to see a major facelift with Harbor Place, which has been the jewel of Baltimore City for many years. We hope to see that be revitalized with maybe new ownership here in the near future, things of that nature. Things haven't changed. I mean, the reality is that also people just are attracted to the waterfront. And we have an incredible opportunity here with the waterfront, not just in the central business district, but extends over to the Canton area, et cetera. The other thing I want to point out, Scott, is that cities don't just necessarily have one location. Many big cities, many great cities have multiple places for economic and employment hubs. So the fact that, we would have loved to have seen T. Rowe Price remain at the heart of downtown. But the reality is that they've chosen to go over to Harbor East. Well, Harbor East is just another economic portion of the city of Baltimore. So you have the Harbor East, Years ago, of course, people were looking at historic preservation if we think about over in the Locust Point area and some of the redevelopment of buildings there, so businesses located there. You've got the Central Business District. The mayor wants to see greater emphasis on the west side of Baltimore. There's nothing wrong with having different areas of the city being economic hubs. People are attracted to different types of buildings, different type of amenities, different types of experiences. So the more opportunities that exist, the greater it is for Baltimore to grow.
Very good. Great way to end. Anything else you want to tell us? I think we're hitting the end of the show. This has been great information. I think it's been very useful. What else would you like the public to know? We have a couple of thousand people that listen to this each week between Facebook and YouTube and everything else. What would you like them to hear?
Well, again, I think the reality, we're all been focused on COVID and what the impact it has been. And there's no doubt. I mean, we haven't seen this for 100 years, and we can't necessarily just push it aside. But the reality is that Baltimore City, prior to COVID, as Beth was talking about, was seeing tremendous progress with respect to occupancy, a lack of vacancies in businesses, economic growth. When you think about the residential, when you think about it, for about the last 3 years prior to COVID, you probably saw more cranes in the sky than you saw previously. I oftentimes tell master's classes that come to us that if you really want to know the health of a city, count the number of cranes that are dotting the skyline. We saw that for many years in Baltimore and some great buildings that came online. I think that that's going to come back. Obviously, we came through a recession. That was a very long recession, and Baltimore started to thrive. I think Baltimore is still going to be poised to recover. It may not be the same because we're going to have to maybe hit the reset button and do things a little bit differently. But in doing so, we're going to make Baltimore even better experience for employees, better experience for employers who want to operate here, and better for people to make day trips and to enjoy all the great things that Baltimore brings. And I think that you're going to see Baltimore being that vibrant city that it was becoming prior to COVID taking effect.
Very good. Beth, it's all yours.
Thanks, Scott. And thank you so much. A very special thank you to Don Fry for being here today and really filling us in. We really appreciate it. And I know I learned a lot. I'm sure our audience did as well. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I want to remind everyone this evening at 5 p.m., please join the Associated, its network of agencies, and LifeBridge Health for a virtual town hall discussion on the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines in Baltimore. Go to associated.org/townhall to register. Hope to see you at that meeting tonight. Next Tuesday, we're excited to have Amy Ann Kellemer, Chief Executive Officer of the Associated's Max Center of Jewish Education on the Upside. She's going to be talking about educating students with learning differences so they don't fall behind during COVID-19. I know it'll be another great show. And in the meantime, visit associated.org and jmoreliving.com for more information, stories, and resources, and sign up for the weekly newsletter. And until we see you again, please stay well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.